Can Donald Trump get to 270 electoral votes to win the presidency? We're going to break it down for you state by state, electoral vote by electoral vote. Sit back. We got a doozy of a show headed your way. Let's get into it. All right, folks, welcome to a special edition of the Sean Spicer Show. Why is it special? Because I think the number one question that I get asked, and I bet you do too, is can Donald Trump win? Can he get the 270 electoral votes that he needs to win? We hear a lot about national polls, and I've told you over and over again, they're meaningless. To some degree, they do show the mood of the country, generally speaking. Which way is it flowing? But who really cares what a bunch of California or New Yorkers feel? No offense to you, but your votes are already going, all your electoral votes are already going to the Dem. You care about those battleground states. You care about Maine and Nebraska. We'll tell you about that in a little bit. You care about the map expanding. And we talked about this once before. So we are going to break this down. This is a show that you are going to want to bookmark and share. Because when someone says, can Trump win, or this is what I saw, this is what you want to show them. You want to say to him, yeah, he can get there. And I'm going to walk you state by state to show you not just how he can get there, but the multiple ways he can get there. We are going to take a deep dive. I mean, no one else is going to do this, by the way. And that's why I'm telling you, bookmark this show, go to YouTube or Rumble. And if you're on the audio version, thank you for listening. And you'll get a lot out of this because, again, we're going to explain it. But from a visual standpoint, from a mapping standpoint, you want to go back and look at the YouTube and Rumble version of this. If you're watching on the first, thank you. Go to YouTube and Rumble and subscribe and bookmark the show so that you can show it to people afterwards. Because I get asked all this time, how could he possibly win? Well, here's how. We will show you. So I'm going to get into this. I want this to be uninterrupted. So I want to tell you about two of our great longtime sponsors that are making this show possible, and then we're going to go into it. We're not going to stop. We're going west to east for Biden in the blue states and then Trump in the red states until we're done. Okay? So I want to tell you about two of the amazing longtime sponsors. And by the way, for those of you who, speaking of sponsors, who have been super helpful, thank you for watching and sharing my documentary, The Front Row Joes. I appreciate it. It's at salemnow.com, or you can go to frontrowjoes.movie, not .com, .movie, frontrowjoes.movie, or salemnow.com to watch it and to share it. The first inside look at the Trump movement, the people who are the backbone of it. I was so proud of this. We sat down with Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago to talk about this movement. If you are interested, go back and watch that show. Really interesting and enlightening. And then you get to meet these people. Whether you're a Trump hater or lover, you will love this documentary because it takes you inside the backbone of the MAGA movement. You saw Steve Bannon, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Mercedes Schlapp, so many people. We talked to journalists as well who are part of that. We followed the Joes around for 2 years. Go to salemnow.com. Also, I have a bi-weekly newsletter on Substack. If you just go to seanspicer.com, you can sign up for it. And we do stuff like that we're doing now, but more insightful. I can write a little short missives here and there when I see stories that don't make the show, or I want more detail, or I want to put a bunch of hyperlinks in. So go to seanspicer.com, sign up for that newsletter. All right, let me tell you about the two amazing sponsors we have, and then we'll get into the map uninterrupted. Okay, I've told you this before. At some point, unfortunately, something's going to happen and knock out power. I've had it happen several times. Sometimes it's only been for an hour or two. Thank you. But I've had it happen for days on end. We had a big storm several years back when our kids were much younger, and we literally had to take them to a hotel. But I also was the guy that got stuck at the house to make sure that everything was still up and running. And that meant me up and running to the gas station, filling up a can of gas at one of the two gas stations that remained open. And then every few hours filling up an outside generator that I had to run cables into the house. Now I've solved all those problems. I have a Patriot Power Generator 2000X. If you go to forpatriots.com/Spicer, you can get one too. You do not want to be behind the curve in a time of emergency. The cool thing about the Patriot Power Generator 2000X is it completely runs on solar panels that come free with it. So all you have to do is plop it out and it'll run for hours. And the most powerful things, refrigerator, computers, tablets, medical devices, all taken care of. And you don't have to worry about running to get gas. You can bring it inside. It's portable, no fumes, right? Because you're not bringing gas into the house. And it's almost there's no noise. It's amazing. I love carrying it around. So you can bring it to a friend's house, a family member's. Don't get behind the curve because you never know when an emergency is going to come. Go to 4patriots.com/Spicer and get your Patriot Power Generator right now before it's too late. All right. The other, we talk a lot about people on the show and some people doing bad things and some people not so nice. The one person that I love talking about who's so good is Leo Grillo, the founder of Delta Rescue. And if you go to deltarescue.org, you will see what I'm talking about. I got to know Leo, and he talked to me about his mission and why he does this. And it's a no-kill sanctuary. He wants these dogs, cats, horses to be able to live and roam free for the rest of their lives, to get the veterinary care, the nutritional care that they need, right? It's not a shelter. This isn't a way station looking for a new home. He takes care of everything. And he does it because he loves animals. I am so excited about the mission that he's taken on. And I want to help him make it one that goes on. And there's a few things we can do. Go check out the videos, share them, let people know about this because that's important. Secondly, go to deltarescue.org and make a contribution. It relies entirely on people like me and you. And then last is when you're on deltarescue.org, there is an estate planning kit that's there. And if you are an animal lover, a dog lover, a cat lover, horse lover, doesn't matter what kind of animal, and you see the work that Leo Grillo has done at Delta Rescue, think about making Delta Rescue part of your estate so that the mission that Leo has founded is an enduring one that goes on for decades and generations, that we don't have to worry. You always hear about these shelters and we have to go down and save these dogs before they're euthanized. But no, Leo gives them a place for life, and we can help make that an enduring thing. Go to deltarescue.org and see what you can do. All right, let's get into the map. Let me just lay some context for you. The current consensus is that there's about 226 electoral votes for Biden and 235 for Trump. Now, if you do the math, that means that there's about 80 up for grabs, okay? We're going to do this step by step. So I'm going to get you to where Biden is, and I'm going to get you where Trump is. The easiest way to do this is to basically fill in the solid blue and the solid red. And then we're going to go the toss-up states, if you will. So let's start with the states that are pretty much a given on the Biden side. Okay, these are the blue, bright blue states that Biden's going to carry. All right, I'm going to start with one of our newer states, Hawaii. This is a given, right? Biden's going to get this. So let's just fill that in, give him the electoral votes in Hawaii. He's going to take all 4 electoral votes there. And then let's move from northwest down the coast a little. Washington State, 12 electoral votes. We're going to put that in the Biden column. Next, Oregon. And we're going to put the 8 electoral votes there for Biden. Now, I will say this with respect to Oregon and Washington, if you're watching the show. I've talked to a lot of people who are very high on the rule vote, getting it out. There's a race for governor in Washington, and I get it. We will do this again, and I will say this about all the states. They may come into focus. They may change one way or the other. You'll see during this map, most of them are moving towards Trump. It's possible. But for the exercise that we're conducting right now, I just want to get to showing the paths to 270. So we're putting those in Biden's column for now. Likewise, we move down the coast. We're going to put all of 54 electoral votes from California in Biden's column. Boom. Now, will the House pick up some congressional seats there or maintain some? Absolutely. Those are what we used to call orphan districts. You see a lot of them in New York and California. Those are non-battleground states where there are competitive House races. Sometimes there's a Senate race, not really this cycle. But there's a lot of races in places like New York and California in particular, where Republicans need to pick them up, will pick them up, but they are not in a competitive state, which is going to create a further complication for the House guys because they have to create their own get out the vote effort and can't worry about the top of the ticket. We'll get to that later in this cycle, but just so you know how we're creating this map and what our focus is today. All right, so let's move a little east and then go back north to south. Colorado's 10 electoral votes I'm putting in the Biden column. Again, there's a few states there less, we've seen that are going to be competitive, but that's not the point of this exercise. We'll talk about the House and the Senate specifically, or in more detail rather, next time. Moving down a little, we've got Illinois. Let's put in all 19 electoral votes for Biden in that column. Okay? Now we're going to move to the Northeast. This is kind of interesting. I'm going to expand on this in a second. But let's start in the top. We're going to move down. Let's start with Vermont. 3 electoral votes, Bernie Sanders. All 3 electoral votes are going for Joe Biden. Okay? Biden knows what he's... I like that. That's my Bernie is okay. I think my Fauci's okay. Science is the problem. Anyway, I can do Bernie. I can do Fauci. I got to think of who else I can do. But I don't mean to digress. Actually, look at that. That's not bad. We do the Bernie Sanders. Joe Biden gets all 3 votes. And then we move to Fauci in New York, 28 electoral votes. Science tells us that 28 electoral votes will go to Joe Biden. All right. These big states don't add up, don't they? I mean, think about it. Look at the blue. It's not a lot geographically, is it? But look at that. You get California, New York, Illinois. We're already up into into a nice chunk into the 100s. That's interesting. They don't actually run a lot of geographic territory, do they? And yet, look at what we've got. So let me continue into New England a little. Massachusetts, 11 electoral votes. We're going to put those into the Biden column. Now, if my math is right, we're at 149. And as I said, think about this. Look at the little that's on there. You carry California, and that's a big chunk of your potential path to 270 if you're a Dem. 54 electoral votes. You add those other states, New York and Illinois, boom. That's the beauty of being a Democrat right now. You carry these big states, and it looks a lot different. All right. Rhode Island, 4 electoral votes. Now, here's the thing. There's been recent polling showing that's a single state lead for Biden right now. It's not surprising. As most of you know, I grew up in Rhode Island. I still spend some time there. It is amazing how many people will come up to me in a state that's rather blue and say, but it's very working class. These are people who work in the water, and they'll say, I'm with you. I'm with Trump. And I don't think Rhode Island's going to go to Trump, but it's amazing. It's down to a 7-point lead for Biden. That's problematic. That sends a big signal if you're him that you're within. I think the last poll showed it 7 points. All right, let's move a little west and south, I guess. Depends where in Connecticut you are, but we're going to put all 7 of Connecticut's electoral votes in the camp for Biden. Okay, that rounds out New England. We're going to be back to Maine in a little bit. I'll explain why in a little bit. We're going to go down into the Mid-Atlantic now. Technically, I guess New York is Mid-Atlantic, but I wasn't including that in New England, so don't freak out. New Jersey's 14 electoral votes. They are going to Joe Biden. Now, I will say this as a side note. There's an interesting Senate race there because Bob Menendez is under federal investigation. Remember Gold Bar Bob? Well, because he's now running as an independent, if he gets 5, 6, 7%, and Andy Kim, who's the congressman that's now the Democratic nominee, doesn't have a ton of name ID, there's a possibility, and again, I'm not saying it's big, it's one to put on the radar from a Senate perspective, that they could actually pull a rabbit out of a hat. I would not go so far right now and say anything, but I'm telling you, I would be intrigued to see where this thing goes. It's a fun one to watch. If you remember, we had Wesley Donahue on a few weeks ago, and he was talking about New Jersey. Now, again, I'm not willing to put it on the map, even for the Senate side, but it's one to throw out there to keep your eye on. All right, Joe Biden's other home state, not Pennsylvania, Delaware, where he spends almost as much time as he does at the White House. All 3 electoral votes are going for Biden. All right. Now we move to Maryland. We'll keep moving south a little, southeast. 10 electoral votes. are going to Joe Biden. Just south, our nation's capital, all 3 electoral votes for the District of Columbia are going to Joe Biden. Now, I have to do a little PSA here. I did this the last time we did the map, and I want to remind you of something. Democrats want to make D.C. a state. I always talk about why the House and the Senate are important. Things like packing the court, that's important. The nominees, important. Policy, important. But here's the thing. If they were to get a majority, they'd have in government, have the White House and the House and the Senate. They will make D.C. a state. D.C. votes 95-5 for Democrats. Those 2 of those 3 electoral votes are because they would get 2 senators for life, and they will vote Democrat. So the Senate would then be 102. Republicans would automatically never, there's not even a chance, not a prayer that they would ever have a chance of competing with us. So we immediately lose 2 seats in any attempt to get close to a majority. Never going to see a supermajority ever. That's a huge bonus. Understand that's the goal of the Democrats. And as I explained, just real quick for those of you who might want to discuss this at like a family picnic this summer, when D.C. was created, they took parts of Virginia and Maryland, okay, to make it a perfect square. 10 by 10 is what the Constitution says. They realized that a lot of D.C. wasn't being used. So they gave part of it back to Virginia, the part that wasn't being used. So if you look at D.C. now, it's not a square, right? It used to be a perfect square. Now it kind of goes like that a little. That part right there was the part that was Virginia. When you fly into Reagan National Airport, you're actually, and they say, welcome to your nation's capital, you're in Virginia. That's the part of D.C. that they gave back to Virginia that they weren't using. So here's the thing that I've always said. There's precedent. If you're not using the full D.C. as a federal district, which is what the Constitution called for, then carve out everything between the mall, which is the National Mall there, between the White House and the Capitol, and give it back to Maryland, right? Not give it to Maryland, give it back to Maryland. It already was part of Maryland. And we took it from Maryland to create a federal district. Give it back. What the Democrats want to do is talk about voter rights and all this stuff. No. That's nonsense. It's a false argument because what they really want is those 2 electoral votes. If they really care about voting rights, then say, great, I agree with you. Give it back to Maryland. And if you're Maryland, you want that back. More people, more federal dollars, more members of Congress. It's a win for Maryland, too. But the Democrats don't want to tell you that because, and again, remember, there's precedent. We did it in Virginia. All right, I've digressed enough, but just understand, I wrote about this in my book, Radical Nation, because that's what's really going on here. All right, so here's where we are right now. Democrats are pretty much guaranteed 190 electoral votes, but I'm going to one-up that. I want to look down. If you look on the right side here on this 270 to win map, you'll see Maine and Nebraska. Maine and Nebraska are the only 2 states that divide their electoral votes by congressional district. If you win the state, you get both at-large electoral votes. So 2 for each. If you win Maine, you get 2 automatically. You win Nebraska, you get 2. Then they break up their congressional district by who wins the congressional district. We'll talk about Maine in a little bit. But Biden has won and probably will win Nebraska's 2nd congressional district. So let's put that one right now in the Biden column. That's going to give him 191. That's where we stop right now for Biden. Those are the givens, okay? 191 pretty much given electoral votes for Biden. Now let's do the same exercise for Trump, west to east, north to south. Okay, I'm going to make sure we jump right in the same way you did with Hawaii with Alaska. Alaska is going to take its 3 electoral votes and give them to Donald Trump, okay? So he's on the board right there. It's got a single House seat. By the way, I think this is a seat, this seat in Alaska, Pelota, right, should come back to Republicans if they run this right. They've got ranked choice voting in Alaska, which is a whole nother story. It's a ridiculous thing. I hate ranked choice voting. This is what allowed the Democrat to get in the last time. I think we have a decent shot of getting it. Okay, I digress. Now, from north-northwest down, we're going to start with Montana, put 4 of the electoral votes in Trump's column right off the bat. Idaho, we're going to give them those 4. Wyoming, we're going to give them those 3. And Utah, those 6, right? I don't think there's any controversy there. All of those are headed his way. Excuse me. Let's go back up north and move south again. We're going to start with North Dakota, 3. South Dakota is going to put its 3 in there. And then Nebraska. This is where I was at. 5 at state Nebraska. We've already given 1, the 2nd congressional district, to Biden. So the other 4 are going to go for Trump. Okay? The 2 at large that Nebraska, that every state gets, because every state has 2 senators, those 2 go to Trump. Then he will win the 1st and the 3rd congressional district. That will give him another 2 for 4. So Trump walks out of Nebraska with 4 electoral votes, Biden with 1. I will say this, both of those districts, and we'll talk about Maine later, but those are possibilities. They in themselves could switch, adding another electoral vote. So we're not done yet, but at least current polling suggests that's where it goes. So again, we're doing this exercise. It will get updated as the cycle goes. If you live in Nebraska's 2nd congressional district and you see polling, let us know. I'm all for this, but I'm just trying to get us a sense of where the race stands right now. Okay, let's go back onto the map. We're going to put Kansas's 6 electoral votes in the Trump column. And then we're going to do the Oklahoma 7. Okay. Now, just south of Oklahoma, we've got the first big prize for Republicans. Texas's 40 electoral votes. Those are going in Trump's column. Okay. Now, look at that amount of territory. We just started with Trump, right? We're about halfway geographically through the country. And yet he's already covered more ground than Biden. But only one big state, Texas, on the Republican side so far. So it's just fascinating to see how much more ground you cover on the Republican side. All right. Now I want to go back up north and come straight down. Let's start with Iowa. Put the 6 Iowa electoral votes in Trump's column. Missouri, I don't know. We talked about this the other day. School me if I'm supposed to say it a certain way. I would say Missouri. 10 electoral votes in Trump's column. Sarah Sanders' state there, the Huckabee State, Arkansas. We're going to put all 6 electoral votes in the Trump column. And then we're going to move right down south here and hit Louisiana and put those 8 in the Trump column. Nice little sweep down there, right, along the Mississippi. All right, let's go back up top. We're going to put the 11 Indiana votes in the Trump column. Then we go to Kentucky and put the 8 electoral votes there. Tennessee's 11 go to Trump. Mississippi's 6 go to Trump. And we end up down south again in Alabama and put those 9 in the Trump column. Okay? So that's where we stand right now. And again, let's look at the amount of territory that covers. I mean, the blue is at 191. The Republicans have much more geographically than the Democrats. It's all about those major metropolitan centers, isn't it? So Trump should be right now, if my math is right, at 155. Biden is at 191. Let's go back up north and come on down again. Ohio, remember Ohio, in the 2000s when Bush was running, that was the big swing state. As Ohio goes, so goes the nation. Now, ruby red. J.D. Vance country, who knows? If he's on the ticket, who knows? But this is a lock, stop, and barrel state for Republicans. All 17 in the Trump column. West Virginia's got 4 electoral votes. That's going in the Trump column pretty solidly. And then South Carolina is going to throw its 9 in with Trump. We're going to come down to the final southern state there on the East Coast, Florida. 30 electoral votes. Again, here's another big prize. We got 2 real big prizes on the Republican side. Texas is 40, Florida's 30. That's giving you 70. That's a big thing for the Republicans. Remember, Florida wasn't always a Republican state. In fact, I would argue if you look at the last few results, it hasn't been. I mean, think about this. The Bush race was 386 votes. But even what Trump won it by wasn't astronomical. Initially, it's gotten redder and redder and redder every year. And I think the pandemic and COVID helped a ton. Look at where we are now. One interesting side note, though. We've talked about this a lot on the show, and it was interesting because Jen O'Malley Dillon, Biden's campaign chair, was on this podcast with John Heilman, who is a left-wing MSNBC loving dude who runs around and pretends to be a journalist. Well, he had him on, and he was going through the battleground states, kind of similar but different than we are. He was just asking her to name the states and kind of tell us what she thought. He asked her about North Carolina, and she said, I feel bullish on that. I feel good about North Carolina from the Biden side. They really do. I'm not there yet. I don't see why they think that yet. I can tell you why in a second. But I will give you my attempt to tell you why they think about it when we get to North Carolina. But when asked about Florida, and remember, the Biden campaign has been saying, oh, Florida's in play, and da-da-da-da. She said point blank, no, it's not. Why does that matter? You can't just win a state randomly. You got to put resources into it. Advertising, get out the vote effort, people, right? And they admit they're not doing it. They played a little game. They wanted everyone to think that maybe the numbers just aren't there. That helps, by the way, Rick Scott, who's running for re-election himself and for the Senate there. Because if they're not putting money in, that's going to make it much harder for his Democratic opponent. But just to be clear, when you hear anyone on the Dem side, it's Jen O'Malley Dillon, Biden's campaign chair, that said that they're not playing in Florida. Full stop. And that's the big deal. All right. Before we kind of end this iteration, I do want to go back up to Maine real quick because I'm going to put one of that congressional districts, Maine 2, in the Trump column the same way that I did Nebraska. Okay? We're going to talk about Maine a little bit more in depth in just a second when we go through the rest of the country. All right, so let's take a look at where things stand right now, right? With everything that's given, we've got 191 for Biden, right? Again, we're not pushed yet. These are just the ones that are pretty much guaranteed for Biden. And we're at 219 for Trump. So that gives us 131 up for grabs. Now, keep in mind, as I've said, these are the ones that when we talk about the consensus map, that's after you push all of these and try to get a sense of, well, this state we pretty much think is going to go one way or the other. We're going to get there. And that's why the next phase, where we're updating this from the last time we did this, is really getting into shading them light blue and light red. The idea here is to say, this is where we think it's going to end up and get a better sense of the overall map. So let's move west to east and start shading in some of this, okay? I want to start with Nevada. Trump is up 4 points right now, 48-44, according to the Real Clear Politics average. That's just shy of that magic number. Once you hit 50, then you're in pretty much safe territory because you know that you've got a majority of the vote, right? He's not there yet in terms of the average of the polls. That tipping issue that we talked about, a big deal there. A lot of service workers, a lot of casino workers. Trump talked about making tips tax-free. That's going to play big there. And also, I don't know if you remember Harry Reid, the senator from Nevada, very powerful, very influential political machine. That's gone when he passed away. Okay. So the Trump campaign feels very, very bullish on that. Trump lost in 2016 by 2.5%. And so this is a state that's right there. And the current polling shows him surging. There's going to be a competitive Senate race here. Current Senators Jackie Rosen, she's running against Sam Brown, the Army captain who just is an amazing, amazing story, recovering from his injuries, loving wife. I mean, trust me, you're going to hear more about this story. She's up about 5 right now, but I think that this race will get really close now that Sam Brown is the official nominee out there. But I feel bullish on this. I want to put this in the Trump column as a light red, right? So we'll give him the electoral votes, but it's going to shade light red so we have a sense of that. Let's move a little east to Arizona. Right now, the Real Clear average of polls has Trump up 48.6 to 43. Okay? I'm going to put this as a light red state, and we're going to give it to Trump. Because with the exception of last cycle, this has been pretty good. Carrie Lake is running for the Senate, running really strong. She's basically within the margin of error against Congressman Ruben Gallego. Kirsten Sinema, the current senator who's technically an independent but was a Democrat, isn't running for re-election. So I say that because this is going to be a dogfight at all levels. It's going to be a real get out the vote effort. I think it favors Trump. And I think the immigration issue as you guys know, is going to be big. These guys in Texas are on the forefront of immigration. So I'm willing to put this until we see otherwise. But if you look at those polls, they're all flowing in Trump's direction. Right? And again, one of the big things, whether it's a state poll or a national poll, is you want to see momentum. Who's got it, who doesn't. I would rather be a candidate that's surging going into election day rather than one that's got a lead that's attriting. Okay? You want to be riding that wave as long as you have enough time. Now, keep in mind, surging, at 4 o'clock on election day doesn't count because you're not going to have enough time. But the way Trump is going right now, he's in a good place. And there's not much that the Biden administration is doing or can do. This immigration issue isn't going to go away, especially if you live in Arizona. So I think this benefits Trump tremendously for right now. Okay. So again, he's up 48.6 to 43 in the Real Clear average politics. That's just over 5. Again, barely short of that 50% mark that is really helpful to look at a candidate and say, okay, they're over 50. So no matter what, they're going to win, right? That's the key thing. Again, going to be a big thing. So that we'll shade that for Trump right now. Now we go to New Mexico. 5 electoral votes at stake there. I'm going to put this light blue for Biden. Now, is it possible? And you heard Jim McLaughlin, one of the president's pollsters, mention they're bullish on New Mexico. I don't think a Republican has won this since Bush in 2004. Is it possible? Absolutely. And, as I said the last time we did this, we will be able to update the map. That's why it's in light. Frankly, it doesn't matter. It's an interactive map. We can change it anytime we want. But I'm just trying to give you a sense. I don't think if the election were held today that we'd win New Mexico. But things change. There's a lot that's going to happen. The conventions, all the things that go around with that, advertising, get out the vote efforts. But until the Trump campaign puts money and time and people into New Mexico, I'm not going to shade it red. That doesn't mean we can't win it. Just means for now, for the exercise. All right, let's move up north. We'll start with Minnesota. 10 electoral votes at stake. Biden still currently has a 3-point Real Clear politics average. And until I'll kind of put this, I feel better about Minnesota than I do about New Mexico. How's that? But there's not a ton of effort. Everybody's starting to get really high on New Mexico. I will get there. But until Trump spends some money, I'm going to put this as a light blue. We could easily see this move to light red or just as a complete toss-up. But I'm not there yet. So if you live in Minnesota, start working. Get out there, knock on doors, get people. I think we can get there. I really do. I think that we talked about this, I think, with McLaughlin. Remember, Reagan even, the one state, little trivia question for you. The one state that Mondale won against Reagan was Minnesota. Technically, he also won the District of Columbia, but that's not a state. But Reagan had this huge sweep. It wasn't until before Reagan that a Republican has won Minnesota. So it just historically isn't there, but I do get the sense that it's moving in the right direction. All right, I want to move a little east here. Wisconsin, 10 electoral votes at stake. It's a dead heat, literally a dead heat. If you go to Real Clear Politics, they are both at 46.9. You can't get more dead heat. This isn't margin of error. This isn't, one has slightly. This is literally a dead heat. Okay? I think that this thing ends up in Trump's column eventually. Okay? In 2016, it was less than a point. In 2020, it was 0.63 for Biden. 20,682 votes for Biden. Okay? That's razor thin. We had that Senate candidate Eric Hovde on the other day. Okay? He's, I think, running really strong against Tammy Baldwin. This could be a really interesting race to watch. Ron Johnson, when he was running for re-election, he's always been behind it. He surges over the top, running a really good campaign, to be clear. We're going to want to keep Wisconsin in focus. This is going to come down to the wire. Historically, and for every other reason, it's going to be there. So I'm just telling you right now, Wisconsin is 10 electoral votes that will be up for grabs. I don't see anything that's going to push it real hard one way or the other. Both are going to fight there. The convention, obviously, is in Wisconsin. I've done a few conventions, okay? I've actually been to every convention since 96. And then both in 12 and 16 was intimately involved in them. Here's what I'll tell you. There's always this good talk by the host side. So in this case, it's the Republicans who claim that the convention is going to help them. It doesn't. No one cares. No one goes, God, I'm going to vote for your guy because you had our convention in our city. Just doesn't. I mean, that's not, people don't vote like that. Could it help with some data? Sure. And I think the resources there and the intention, sure. So, and when you're at that much of a razor's edge, right? What did I say? 2020, 20,682 votes. Yeah, this is going to be a big deal. And they know it on the left. They're going to be all in on Wisconsin. That was the state that Hillary Clinton screwed up. Remember, she didn't show up. Dum. All right, we're going to move east. Michigan, 15 at stake here. By the way, I forgot to say it. I don't want to shade Wisconsin right now. We're going to leave this for a second because we got to come back to it. That's how close this thing is. All right, let's go to Michigan. 15 at stake. This is the same as Wisconsin, except technically a little bit here. 46.4 to 46.2. Biden with 0.2 of a point. That's nothing. That's literally the average of these polls. It's nothing. It's literally as dead heat as you can get. So many issues are at play in Michigan. You got the Teamsters issue, right? You think about this. Trump invited the head of the Teamsters to speak at the convention, and he said yes. This is a shock. This should be, I'm sure that the Biden team is furious with the Teamsters right now. But this is a big deal. These auto workers, I don't think that a lot of them really care what the head of the union thinks. But again, when it's that close, 10,000 of them shifting, that's big. You think about Detroit and the erosion of the black vote for Biden. This is big. You think about the issues that he's had with Muslims and Palestinian voters because of what's going on in Israel and Hamas. This, remember during the primaries, all these folks saying we're not voting for anyone. No, it was none of the above. This is Michigan. This is a problem for him. Okay. This has been very, very close. I always tell you my go-to stat in Michigan, 2016, 0.22%, 10,703 votes. That's how close this is going to be. We're keeping this unshaded again. Sorry, 2 in a row. But that's how close they are. And I want to show you the consequences of that in a second. All right, let's go back up north. I said I would talk about Maine. Here we are. 4 electoral votes at stake. This state right now, yes, we've seen polling showing it dead even. We've gotten a lot of excitement about this. We talked to folks. I'm going to put this in the Biden column for now. The 3 electoral votes, the 2 statewide and the 1st congressional district. Trump gets the 2nd. So of the 4 at stake, Trump gets 1, Biden gets 3. Can things change? Absolutely. Maybe the next time that we do this, I go from light blue to light red. I need to see a little bit more and a commitment from the Trump campaign that they're actually going to make it a play for it, okay, by putting people in there and some money into this. But this would be big. It's not a ton, but it's in a close race. Taking 3 off the map for your opponent and putting 3 into your column. So we'll see. And I think the Trump campaign is equally looking at this saying, all right, let's see if there's a couple more polls that come out. And I was surprised. I've been up there before. Guns are a big issue. You've got a great couple candidates running in those districts. NASCAR driver running in that 2nd congressional district who's phenomenal, raised a ton of money. I think that you could see that flip for the Republicans. 2nd district could be competitive too. That could happen. So there's a possibility that you could end up with Trump taking both congressional districts. There's a bunch of scenarios at play. Okay. So let's keep an eye out. But for the sake of this, we're going to shade that for Biden. All right. New Hampshire. I'm going to approach this the same way that I just approached Maine. Okay. 4 electoral votes at stake. I could see this coming into play like I did with Maine, but I want to keep it light blue for now. In the 2016 campaign, Trump only lost by 2 points, and he lost by 7 the last time. There's something going on in New England. I told you about Rhode Island. I've seen the data in Maine. New Hampshire, the live free or die state, man. I don't know. I think that there's something there. They got a competitive gubernatorial race. Chris Sununu, the popular multi-term governor, isn't running for re-election. I don't know. Let's see how this plays out. It's not there yet for Trump. Biden still has a nice enough lead, at least in the public polling. So if you know more and you live in New Hampshire, let me know. But for now, for the sake of the exercise, we're going to keep that light blue. All right. We've got 6 states left. I want to give you kind of a quick run through of where we are now, because this is with the map. This is it, folks. This is where things are going to move fast and furious. And whereas we move forward, it's all going to happen. And this is where someone's going to get to 270. Pennsylvania, 19 electoral votes. Okay, Trump is currently up by 2.8%. Okay, 48 to 58.2. This is really close. I want to punt this just like I did Michigan and Wisconsin for now. Trump won by 0.5 in 2016, and Biden is in the books with just over a point win in 2020. McCormick and Casey, big Senate race there. Casey holds currently, according to the latest public poll, a 6-point lead. I think this continues to get closer and closer and closer. This, by the way, keep seeing something right now, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. All right, Virginia, 13 electoral votes at state as we move south. The last time Virginia went Republican, when? Sean Spicer trivia, 2004, when I served as an elector. There you go, if that comes up. Now, I just gave you a thing there. All right, recent polling shows it's tied. Trump's spending a little bit of time in Virginia. Glenn Youngkin getting a little bit more active. The campaign doing a rally there, right, down in Chesapeake. This is big. They're showing some interest. I think it's a good story. I would put Virginia, it's getting there. It's getting there. But for the sake of this, we're going light blue. Okay, you'll see why in a second. I can see this coming into play, though, guys. Youngkin, what he did and what's going on, it's all going to be about turnout. Okay? Hung Kao running for the Senate, just emerged from a primary there. Navy veteran. He can play well big in Northern Virginia with the Asian communities. And there's a big several blocks of Asian communities in Northern Virginia. And he plays big in the Hampton Roads area because of his Navy background. Okay? North Carolina, 16 electoral votes. Trump has won twice, despite what Jen O'Malley Dillon said. I'm going to put Trump in light red here, okay? Put North Carolina in the light red column. I think this ends up in his column. They're high on this only because Mark Robinson, the current lieutenant governor, they don't think he's running the strongest race. I don't think that's going to matter. I think North Carolina is going to go into the Trump column. Okay, Georgia, Trump is currently up by 46.2 to 44.2. Trump won by 5 points in 2016. I'm putting Georgia back in the light red column because I think that's where it ends up. Okay, so look at where we are now. I think if I'm correct, Trump is at 268. Biden's at 226. 44 outstanding. Okay, these 3 states, folks, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania are where the race goes. So this is where I want to tell you what I want to say right now. Okay, Trump is he needs 2 to win. Biden needs to get from 226 all the way up to 270. Trump just needs one of those outstanding 3 states, Michigan, Wisconsin, or Pennsylvania. Okay? We've been very conservative, as I told you. And the reason I shaded New Hampshire, Maine, Minnesota, all those for Biden is because I want to show you Trump right now, one state puts him over and he becomes president again. He can potentially expand the map even more. Virginia, New Hampshire, Maine. I was very conservative with Trump. Think about any state there and tell me where I'm wrong. I don't think there is one. I don't think anyone from Biden would say that. Okay? Look, maybe Nevada and Arizona move. We'll see. But right now, I feel good if I were on Trump. Pennsylvania is going to be critical to a Biden win. And there's a reason I left them unshaded. Trump could take the Pennsylvania 10, the Michigan 15, and the Wisconsin 10. He could run it all. Okay, pick up another 35 electoral votes. Boom, you're at 3. This is Trump's to lose right now. I left those unshaded because I want to show you that. You go and play yourself. We're going to continue to do this, though, through this cycle. But the goal right now is to show you where things stand. I appreciate you being with us. Thanks for tuning in. This is a show you want to bookmark, subscribe, and share. Like you do every day, continue to subscribe to our show, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeart, wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you back here tomorrow on The Sean Spicer Show. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.